call the meeting to order, start the recording. And the first item on the agenda, public comment. Jeannie, is there anyone on?
No hands raised.
Pardon?
No hands are raised.
No hands are raised. Are there people?
There are 3 people that are on right now.
Okay, thank you. Next is the approval of the minutes from April 10th. That was included in the packet that was sent out. Are there any edits or updates of the meeting minutes from April 10th?
I have a question and or comment.
Okay.
In item 3A, are we the board or the committee?
The board would be the Board of Selectmen. I mean, is that, Gina, you typed it, is that the, when you referred to the board in the first sentence? Or are we the board?
You're the board.
We're the board. Okay, we would be the committee.
Okay.
We should be referred to as the committee. And the board would be either Board of Selectmen or Board of Finance. So.
So then a follow-up in paragraph 8, the public comment, the 4th line down. There's a sentence, the board is mindful that the budget was developed before COVID, et cetera, et cetera. Should that be the committee also?
I don't recall the context that was. Board, since board is capitalized, I think, would that be the Board of Selectmen?
No, it's referring to you.
The yes again? Okay. So if you could change that, the board in those instances, the committee?
And then a personal note up in item 4, the next to last paragraph, my first name has an E in it.
Recording in progress.
Any other comments on the agenda, on the minutes from the last meeting? Do I have a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
I think that was in favor, not opposed. Yeah, there must be a delay. There's probably some sort of delay here.
Delay in my brain too.
We were both trying to unmute quickly.
Oh, okay. Chair update or chair comments. I had 2 and they're related. First is, I believe everyone's been noticed that Eileen Davis has decided to resign from our committee, citing personal reasons. She has a letter of resigning, tender her resignation. I don't know if we can we put that in the minutes? Can we include that in the minutes to note that? No? Anyway.
And that letter will get forwarded to the Board of Selectmen.
Right, I believe it should already be on its way to the Board of Selectmen. As a second thing to note is, I'd like to thank Eileen for the work that she's done and recognize her for how she contributed, for her contributions to the committee, and thank her for her service over the last however number of months it's been since we started. Any other comments? Anybody else want to chime in?
Logistically, what does that mean for our committee?
Second item on the chair comments.
I'm just trying to lay them up for you.
It's just, nice job. since we were all chosen by the Board of Selectmen, that is the process for choosing a replacement also.
Yes.
And the task for that is handed to Al Goldberg and Bruce Wilson. I know they have already spoken about it. I don't know if we have anything to report, so we're going to leave it in their hands. They will recommend a replacement, and that person will be, if accepted, will come on the committee. We don't vote to approve that. Nobody approved us, so there was no committee to approve us. But if recommended by and accepted by Al and Bruce, that person will become a member of the committee.
That's correct. The Board of Selectmen makes the appointments. And their charter says the Board of Selectmen also has to accept the resignations. We never once not accepted a resignation.
And I don't want anybody to try that. No going after that, knowing that they've never rejected those resignations. Next up is Collier's report.
Good evening, everybody. Let's share this with you. It's the update to the ongoing milestone schedule. And we have just a couple of things that have occurred since the prior meeting.
Is there something that can be shared on screen or no?
No, I don't believe.
Do you have an electronic version?
Not, I mean, my laptop, I could look at calling that up, but it may take a little while. I mean, just to be honest, there's not too much, that has occurred as far as the updates are concerned since the last meeting. We have had a meeting yesterday, actually, with Peggy Lyons, updated her on the status of things. Tom reviewed a couple of updates that I'm sure he'll share with us momentarily. And a lot of the pending modifications to this will likely be covered on item number 6 in tonight's meeting regarding the subcommittee discussion. So, Tom's continuing the design process, and we are continuing to assist with that, and we'll update this schedule accordingly based on some of the decisions that are made tonight potentially.
I'd like to note that the community center tours, 2 of them at least, were being set up by Eileen, and I will attempt to pick that up. She gave me the contact information.
For the Wyndham.
For Wyndham,
Right.
that's the one that I'm doing. I have the contact there. She was going to do Branford, and I'm not sure I don't remember the other. Branford is on here.
Yeah, those are the only 2 that I was aware of as far as pending.
I just, if I do go through the effort to set them up, they're usually, late in the day. Is there a, would anybody else on the committee other than me be able to make it? I mean, I could go ahead and do it, but the number of people who, Ann showed up for the first one, way to go ahead. And I tried to set up the one in Wyndham, and no one else was going to come except me. And it was pouring rain, and I said, I'm not driving up to Wyndham. But the gentleman there that I spoke to was very willing to give a group a tour. Branford's a lot closer. If I set something up there, would that be something that would be of interest to the rest of the group?
It would, the more warning, the better, usually, and that's where I think I got mixed up with the other ones where they come up really quick. And if I need to get it on the calendar, it's usually, if I can get it a week out, great. If I get 2 weeks out, even better.
If I set it up, it will be either, if it's 2 weeks from now, I won't be here. Since I'll be on vacation. If I haven't said that 100 times already, I'll say it one more time. So it would probably be somewhere around the end of May. that's still convenient, that, I hope that would be convenient, but I'll look to set up one or more of these near the last week in May.
I don't think that affects our timeline.
No, it doesn't. It's really, they're informational. I enjoyed the people of Rocky Hill were very friendly. It was great to walk through what they did. There's a much smaller building, but you know, it has many of the same elements that we have. And you want to, actually, this is a good place, Ann.
I did get some printed documentation, I can just pass it around. Schedules and amenities, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Remembering that the Rocky Hill one is also a senior center.
Any other comments on the schedule that John passed out? And John, for the next meeting, in-person meeting, if you could have this available to so that the everyone online will be able to share it also. And is this, can this be, I'm sure this can be distributed electronically.
Yes.
So if you could send, be sure to include Jeannie, she'll get it to the committee after, or with the minutes of this meeting.
Sure.
Is there a page 2 for it? It says 1 of 2.
Page 2, which is the backside of it. Yeah, that's the next phase, the design development, which is yet to be determined.
Anything else, John?
No, that's all I have at this point, Joe.
Take a look at that. Tom, architect report.
Great, so we've continued to document the existing building, identified more of the details, make sure that our three-dimensional model is in
Excuse me.
alignment.
Could you speak up a bit? I'm sure, we've been told that if you're in here, you really do have to speak up. I'm sorry.
Great, sorry. So our team has been documenting the existing conditions. We've been on site a couple times, taking measurements, and we now have our model very close to what the actual conditions are. We're having an in-house meeting tomorrow with all of the sub-consultant staff, MEP engineers, site civil engineers, structural engineers, to get them rolling down the path of schematic design. Our goal is June 1 submission for a schematic design so that we can start getting costing in place. I think realistically, we should have a solid cost projection in place by around July 1st. And that would be our first stab at the cost and the scope. Usually the first stab at the cost and scope is the point where we have to make the biggest decisions about project direction and what's in, what's out, what can we allocate for alternates, so that we can get everything in alignment with the budget. In that timeframe will also be, we still have the survey work, which is underway. We'll be doing septic analysis. We'll coordinate any owner consultants that need to be brought on board. So a lot of work is going to start happening in the next month. Other than that, I have no other news.
I did have a phone call with Erin Mannix. Maybe you're aware of it, but there's a grant for the brownfield assessment. And she just wanted to get together at an appropriate point with us and or you to be sure that we are meeting the conditions of the grant. Are you aware of that grant, or?
I'm not aware of that, but I probably should come up to speed.
I'll get back to Erin and have, I originally said if she wanted to, she could wait till after I came back from from vacation, but it sounds as though maybe you might need that information sooner.
Not sure. I didn't realize it was a brownfield site, so sooner might be better.
Okay.
What does that mean? What's the brownfield saying?
Just there are environmental issues on the site, subsurface soil conditions that qualified the building to pursue a grant for its remediation.
And the only one that we've spoken about are the tanks, the oil tanks that were buried. And I don't know if the source, the septic system counts as, I mean, it's just, sounds brownfield to me, but.
Maybe.
But we should, Joe, maybe you can.
It could be asbestos and lead paint and stuff like that too, so. It'd be interesting to see the conditions of the grant.
Okay.
To see what they need to stick to. How much was that grant for?
200,000.
Oh, that's actually not a lot.
That's not
Relative. So it could be for the hazardous materials removal and towards the tank removal.
It could, if I recall, she said it may just be for the assessment. I don't know if that, 200,000 sounds like a lot for an assessment,
That's a lot for an assessment.
but not much for remediation, so.
Well, if it's just a couple tank removal, 200,000 is in the magnitude of cost for that type of work. And if there's some soils around the tanks that need to be removed, that sounds apropos. I believe one of the tanks is sort of under the courtyard and in the middle of the building, so that makes it a little harder to get at.
I will get back to her and make sure that they get in touch with all of us. Yeah,
How much testing is required and how is that determined?
For the tank work, that testing may actually have already been done.
For general brownfield conditions?
Good question. That work was likely done. I'll get my hands on the environmental assessments.
is that the Fuss and O'Neill report? Is that the,
That would probably be the
Should be within that.
anything else, Joe?
Yeah, it would depend on the nature of the expected contaminant or contaminant of concern. So it's underground storage tanks, it's asbestos, it's lead paint.
And how much capital additional work is required based upon something that gets discovered? We remove the tanks, for example.
Yeah, I believe I've seen it enough that the assessments have been already done. But the question is, where are they and what do they indicate? Now is this plan?
Tom was saying, once you dig a hole and you pull the tank out, do you notice soil staining? Does it smell? Then they'll want to test further.
Hey, Joe.
The whole
Hey, Joe.
Yeah, Dave, go
Hey,
ahead.
yeah, the one thing I would mention, I think you are correct. I think that grant was toward engineering and assessment development, that 200,000, not construction or remediation removal. The second thing I would say is I think those reports are from like 2014, 15. They probably need to be reviewed by Fuss and O'Neill to make sure there hasn't been any regulation changes in the last several years that, may need updates to those assessments.
John, I see you're taking notes. Does that fall on the engineer, or our project manager?
Yes,
Okay.
it does.
Yeah, so Joe, we have a contact with Fuss and O'Neill, I think, if John wants to reach out or someone, and just probably talk through those reports, maybe with Aaron.
Sure, we'll follow up with that.
Is it anticipated that that work will start in parallel to everything else you're doing now, or are you gonna wait till maybe July, to start that?
The assessment updates should be done as soon as possible.
And then just one thing, Joe. So Tom, your site civil engineer, you said you're starting to look or meeting with them tomorrow. They're going to do assessment of the existing system and kind of do layout for a new system, I assume.
I presume as much. I don't know what the condition of the existing system is, so.
Yeah, that, I mean, obviously that'll be good information for Fuss and O'Neill too, depending on where we're going to locate things, right, on the grounds.
Yep.
Any other questions for Tom? Or the architect in general?
I was wondering about, there seemed like there was a lot of discussion last time about design. Was there anything used, or is it just general discussion about design changes that were happening for each department and family services?
Since the last meeting, we've made a few minor changes to the layouts. Those changes were associated with technical changes that happened when we measured the building. We haven't shown those or discussed them with anyone at this time. As far as I'm concerned right now, though, it's just an internal document. I haven't presented that yet.
All right, now what is the order of operations? Because you're meeting with folks to get schematic designs. That's based on the layout that we have now, and then are there going to be alternative layouts shown to us after that, or how is that? What is the order of operations?
So ultimately, at some point, we will be presenting a proposed layout to go forward. I presented a layout last week, which was just a first stab. I have not received any feedback on that. The layouts primarily are just going to affect the tenants of the building, the permanent tenants. That would be Beach and Rec and Youth and Family Services. The remainder of the spaces are essentially multifunction, multi-use spaces that are going to remain in their existing configuration. So the primary design moves for the building are the entrance, lobby, cafe space, which provides the accessible elevator, the tenant spaces, which are offices for youth family services, Beach and Rec, and then pretty significant renovations to the recital hall on the south side of the building and the gymnasium auditorium on the north side of the building. The majority of the other spaces are just getting refreshed. There's light renovations in those spaces. So we will be presenting design plans to this committee at some point in the coming future. We'll get feedback from this committee, and that will guide us through the iterative change process.
Okay, so we get one design, we react to that, or you present sort of here are 3 options that.
Generally, I present one design based on what was laid out in the study phase and what the building committee presented as a part of the RFQ process. Meaning, here's where the Beach and Rec goes, here's where youth and family services go, and then I'll take your feedback from this committee. If the committee says that stinks, I want to see something different, we try and present something different. We got to start somewhere, so you get your feedback.
Yeah, I think where I'm going is like, this committee wasn't part of that RFQ process, so that was handed to us. So I think we saw a lot of different architects, there was a lot of ideas that came out, there were things that we liked, there were things we didn't like. I don't know if there's been a process to communicate those ideas from this committee to your firm, so those can be, considered for design, or if we do that after you present sort of your your
You
first
can
draft?
do that at any time. I have not received an ounce of input back from the building committee to this point regarding, we like this approach, or this is directive that we'd like to see you follow. So that can happen at any time as a vehicle. These meetings are a vehicle for that communication.
Joan has her hand raised.
Joan has her hand raised.
Joan, recognize you?
Okay, so I thought the last meeting, we did give a bit of feedback that potentially I'd like to see an alternative to having most of the third floor be Madison Youth and Family Services. I think that's one thing that we want to ensure that the entire, well, upper level, I'll call it now, sorry, is not fully or majority, I should say, youth and family service beyond what was originally kind of scoped out there. The other thing is, did you, in the next round of design, are you going to take into consideration the feedback from the surveys that the advisory committee presented?
Yes, so I have the study prepared by the advisory committee. I'm taking all that information, I've reviewed that information and incorporating it into updates and revisions to the concept. Keep in mind that all of that information is very informative about what types of amenities they'd like to see in each of the spaces, or what types of program elements could potentially happen in each of those spaces. But there is not significant feedback in that study about this program should be over here, or this program should be over there, or there should be different changes to the design itself.
Mhm. So from just a little feedback now from me, from a theater perspective, that front theater is very narrow. That stage is very narrow. I could see that as a recital or maybe a small group type of thing, or a small music. But I'd love to be able to see the stage that is going to be part of the auditorium gymnasium, kind of try to think about ways of allowing unique seating so that could be used as something that could be revenue generating. If we look at the seating that's in our current high school, where the seats fold into, maybe a 1 to 2 foot space, I think maybe 3 at the most, and then they pull out. I would love to be able to think about that kind of usage so that we're not stacking chairs and setting chairs up and bringing chairs down and things like that. So just some thoughts on my end on that piece. Thank you.
Joan, just to a counterpoint, I just had friends that went to one of the high schools like this, that they have a lot of challenges with acoustics when they try to do theater productions in an auditorium, in a gymnasium space. Thank you. So I totally hear you, and I empathize with the point that we need a nice auditorium space for high school productions, things like that we don't have in town unless there's another building that has it. That's a concern that I've heard from others that
I've lived through it, having had 2 kids go through
there
the
you go,
theater
you know what it's
program.
like.
So the critical thing is making sure that there's sound dampening stuff that's in this, high up that would not interfere, say, with basketball and things like that. So it's a unique item, but I think from a revenue generation, there's a lot of potential theater groups that could utilize a space that had some good seating and a stage that had good depth. So I just, something to consider.
When will that first design be brought to us? In other words, should we be cataloging a list of concerns and suggestions and voting on them? I mean, so that, we don't just get one person's view, or should we wait till we see your design and then work off that as a base? How should this process go forward?
Well, normally, when we work with communities like yourselves, we report to the building committee as a whole on a monthly basis. And we work with a designated subcommittee or design subcommittee that gives us feedback on a very regular basis, back and forth, back and forth. As of right now, we don't have that vehicle put in place. So we can continue to present design concepts at each and every building committee meeting, solicit feedback, take those notes, incorporate those notes. I think that's potentially a little more time consuming, as you know, every single design option would be put to a committee vote. I think that's, you know, potentially very unrealistic, but as a committee, I'm going to rely on you to tell me what the process has to be to satisfy, you know, your needs.
John, what does Colliers think about this?
I mean, I agree with Tom. Typically, what you have is a group, a subcommittee that will end up helping to provide the feedback and help expedite the process, as opposed to meeting every month or every, you know, twice a month in this case. You know, to Tom's point, that will end up probably extending and delaying the design process if the decision-making is that staggered. Whereas, you're not getting more frequent feedback and comments from, you know, subcommittee group would help to certainly expedite some of the decision process, so that at the time of the next meeting, next building committee meeting, there is, you know, a lot more to present, and, you know, some of those comments from prior subcommittee meetings are able to be incorporated into the, you know, latest and updated design. So, you know, typically we do see a subcommittee or a group that will help to help the architect expedite some of the design, you know, process.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah,
Joe, I'm just going to give you using my experience. I think it's inefficient for us to wait monthly to meet up to go over these things. I would hate for Tom to go down a road of designing something for us to say no and have him backtrack. That's just a waste of time. So I think at some point we need some sort of check-ins or whatever we want to call them along the way to be able to provide feedback to Tom so we can run this efficiently and keep on schedule. Thanks.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe,
No, I was gonna,
Joe's nodding yes.
I was gonna echo that, but also say, does it make sense to get through the schematic design, finish your surveys, get your cost estimates to first then see at least what's in the ballpark of what we're dealing with, and then start to look at either a subcommittee or how we give that feedback. We'll let them come up with their initial, here's what we think we can do, here's what we think it's actually gonna cost. Would
The
you
other
say
thing,
that
Well,
June, or does that not make sense?
I think that makes sense, but more of the design decisions are made up front. Once the design is sort of funneled into a direction, then it's more fine tuning, and then we're working out details and we're doing technical issues, which the committee would not necessarily opine on in a significant way. So really upfront is the time where I need feedback. For instance, I hear a concern tonight about the stage in the gymnasium. Well, the original plan was just to refresh the existing stage and footprint. There wasn't a plan to extend the stage or make the stage bigger. There wasn't a plan originally to put fixed seating or tiered seating in the recital hall. If these are things that are key needs, those things need to be determined ahead of time, because they have significant configuration impacts, and they have significant cost impact and significant acoustic impacts. So those kind of design decisions need to be discussed up front. So we need that feedback sooner than later. So my plan was to come to the next meeting with a consolidated schematic design approach. This is what we're proposing. this is what all the spaces would, how they'd be configured. This is where we are based on the feedback that we've received today, and use that as an open forum to discuss the design. I think that's the best I can do right now until a subcommittee is put in place. And if there is no subcommittee put in place, that's, I think, the venue that we're gonna just have to live with from a design review standpoint.
Hey, Joe, can I just add one other thing?
Go
Joe,
ahead.
so Tom, are you able to share that model or just give us like the floor plans with dimensions on it, just for us to look at too? Because I have no clue how big that gymnasium actually is, or these rooms that we're looking at.
Yes, we can provide some scaled plans, and we can put some big dimensions on the space. We don't have dimensions on the plans now, but we can put dimensions on for reference.
Right? I think that would make sense for our committee, or that would be a suggestion, Joe. Because if we're looking at, trying to review that advisory board findings, we can kind of look at what we have for space and maybe give some suggestions also, right? Especially the gymnasium for multi-use. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah,
Usually going into this space, we would have what's called user requirement spec to give the architects to say, here's all the users, here's their requirements. Unfortunately, going down the path kind of without that, right?
Well, no, not entirely. So we've met with the primary tenants and identified what their space needs are, Beach and Rec and Youth and Family Services. We've also reviewed the programming document put together by the advisory committee, which is very helpful. So we have a really good understanding of what ideally would go into every space. But what I do think the committee should understand is we're working primarily with an existing building. All of the spaces, for the most part, keep their existing configuration, other than the lobbies, elevator space, the front recital hall. We had proposed in our original concept design to create operable partitions to the classrooms to the left and to the right, so that we could open it up and create some different flexible seating configurations. But the rest of the building, because it's all bearing walls, have historic space configurations, those spaces would remain their existing size and shape.
You've gone as far down the kitchen, stuff like that you're going all the way down that path,
So in the
as an
kitchen,
example.
we've put a preliminary concept together as to how the kitchen could be laid out to meet the educational programming needs that were identified in the advisory committee study. But that will again continue to be refined.
So it sounds like you are incorporating those wants and needs, but then it's the scope and cost estimates, sort of June, you said maybe at the beginning of July, to see what that actually costs. That would be the goal, sort of get that schematic design, get the final cost, not the final cost, but a really good solid estimate of what it's going to cost us to actually do all the wants and needs. And then this committee have to start to pare back, depending on, say, it comes back at 18, 20 million.
Potentially.
yeah. Joe,
So
Joe, did you say you were going to be out the week of the 8th, May 8th?
Yes.
Okay, so do we want to
But
try to
doesn't-
do a
the world-
special meeting before that or after that? I'm just thinking. The
I'm-
more people that are in the room for reviewing the plan, I think is better.
I'm gone for 3 weeks. I leave Sunday, the April 30th, and I return this 22nd of May. So I'm out. And so anything in that time period is, Dave, we're next man up.
I'm in.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah, I'm gonna be at an airport on the 8th, but I can try to get in for most of the call. I just gonna be flying that night.
It was helpful for time, too.
Also, I know we've become accustomed to, meeting remotely and online meetings, but design review meetings are much more productive if we're all in the same room.
Which is why why we're here. And going forward, all these meetings are in person. I'm still struggling on how the best way to move forward is. It seems as though the choices are you go all the way to a design that we get an estimate on, and then we make changes based on both the design and the estimate and try to bring it to a point that is acceptable in terms of the use of the building and acceptable on the budget. Or we begin giving you additional information now, as a preliminary on the preliminary design, and use that as you incorporate going forward. Are they two mutually exclusive? Is there a medium? We haven't gotten to the subcommittee discussion yet, though, so let's not throw out the subcommittee idea yet. We're throwing out the subcommittee as a name, but there will be, we will have the ability to shape what comes in front of the committees, our committee, at a future meeting by what we put in and out of the agenda. So it will be difficult to say that we're making decisions at that point, but we should be able to shape the agenda in such a way that it helps you and helps our committee make decisions in a timely manner.
Well, at this point, without a subcommittee in place, as of this minute, I would recommend that we have a design review presentation in no longer than 2 weeks from now. Whoever can be here, great, please be here. And we would, present the concept and get as much feedback as we can so that at least over the following 4 weeks, we're not, running in a direction that we might completely back off of.
Okay.
So I think that's the best approach as of today.
Can I request a special meeting then the week of maybe Tuesday next week, Tuesday night? Is that too short a notice? I don't think so.
Well,
That's like 5
we'll
days.
present what we have and that's fine. I think that's fine. Let me just make sure it works for me.
Yeah, but we have our next regularly scheduled meeting on the 8th, correct? Of
Yeah.
May 8th.
I'm not
So
going to
what
be, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to be there. I'll try to give as many notes as I can, but I'm going to be in an airport at that time.
Well,
JFK.
Tom, is there any way that you can send it out ahead of time prior to the 8th meeting? So Joan and others, maybe that can attend, can look at it and just put some comments on paper?
Yes.
I think that may be a good idea. Joe, then we don't have to have
Yeah,
another
there you go.
meeting.
Okay, there you go.
If we could do it on the
So that
first.
was, May 8th will be a special meeting then.
No, the 8th is our regular scheduled meeting, isn't it?
Oh, 8th is the regular.
Yeah.
8th is regularly,
So next meeting.
you're looking to have a meeting on the 2nd.
Okay.
Or the 3rd.
Yeah, I'm in an airport on the 8th as well. So.
Tuesday's the 2nd.
Second.
I'm in an airport on May 5th.
So Joe, are we able to, I guess we can't move our regular scheduled meetings, the one that's on the 8th, we can't move it to maybe the Thursday before on the 4th or something like that? That's not an option?
Yes, we can move it, yes.
I mean, Tom, could you make the 4th for a presentation?
If I can get information ahead of time, I can be hybrid again. But
Well, on the 8th, if you and Joe P aren't available and Joe's out, that's 3 out of 7 that aren't going to be there, right, on the 8th?
3 out of 6 at this point. You want to even
Oh,
have a
that's
quorum.
true. That's true. We don't have Eileen. Can we bring her back with some chocolate chip cookies for one meeting?
I asked that. She, no.
Is anybody, so people aren't available on the second? Are people available on the second or no?
I can do second, possibly the fourth, and I could do the fifth.
Second, fourth, fifth are.
I can do the second.
I can do the second. I can do the second. I think I can do the fourth.
I would prefer the fourth.
I'm babysitting, but I can be via Zoom with 2 kids in the background, which will be interesting.
May 4th, would that be, Tom, would that be the type of meeting that would be an in-person meeting?
Yeah.
Preferably, right?
I mean, does it have to be at 5:30 at night, Joe? Can it be a different time?
Make it any time we want. Midnight. Can't-
So-
can't
so
midnight, 'cause
does-
that doesn't qualify as May 4th anymore.
Do people have, so people have an issue with the second? I just want to, because I'd like to be there in person, and if I'm,
Were you available with the second?
Yes.
And you said you had a preference,
I prefer the fourth, but I can do the second.
AJ?
Yeah, either one is fine.
Either one's fine.
Okay, May 2nd.
So
And
is
now
that-
time.
Is that taking the place of the meeting on the May 8th, or is that in addition to that
We could decide that on May 2nd.
on the May 2nd? Okay.
Yeah, I think, Joe, we should just move that meeting from the 8th to the 2nd. Because if no, Tom?
I'm sorry, I forget that you can see me. Why not have both meetings? I will meet and present on the second. I will try and respond and, meet and present again on the 8th. I think that helps me get as much feedback as possible. It's a lot of work for me, but the sooner I can get direction, the better.
Okay,
Are we gonna have a quorum on
Yeah.
the,
We'll have a quorum on the 2nd.
we'll have a quorum on the
But
second.
we
but
will
I
have
don't
a
know
quorum on
if-
the 8th.
is there
you may
always-
have a quorum on the 8th if the Board of Selectmen appoints somebody prior to that. And if not, it's still, you're not voting on anything necessarily, right?
Right,
Even if you're giving guidance, it's just not an official vote. So you won't be able to approve minutes, but you could still meet. And I could try to get, we could all try to be there from the airports and give our say and jump on
and
planes.
that would be May 8th.
Mhm.
So May 2nd and May 8th, hold both of those meetings. They're a little less than they're a week apart, they're 2 different weeks.
So I'm going to move that we hold a special meeting on May 2nd, since the 8th is already scheduled.
Second that?
Same time? There's this-
Yeah, well, I'm good at 5:30.
5:30, good, perfect. Okay, same time, 5:30. Any opposed? Assume all in favor? Okay.
Aye.
Carry.
We need a location.
We will need a location. Jeannie, can you get us a location? Thank you. And could you make that a hybrid meeting also?
So Joe, I have a question about the hybrid meetings. If we're gonna have a hybrid meeting and discuss
11:30.
design concepts, how is anybody online gonna see the documents?
Gonna share it ahead of time, right?
Or share screen?
You share a screen or share it ahead of time. I'm thinking that it's 5:30 is 11:30 in Italy.
AM or.
So I would.
Have a little wine, come out and talk, no problem.
Share screen.
I would presume that we would share the presentation digitally on the screens, and then it could be seen by anyone calling in.
Okay, perfect.
Is that feasible?
I was looking for a room, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Is it possible to share screens?
Yeah, I can.
From a
present.
single, like from, from this spot essentially?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think anybody can share a screen once they're a panelist. So I think Tom would just have to be upgraded and then he can share his screen.
Even though Tom's in the room.
I might just use Jean's laptop or the host's laptop and share that screen, but either way, yes.
Joe, if I might resurrect one of my old concepts again, which is nomenclature. It's very important for our public to not be led astray by the fact that we're using very different nomenclature at times for certain rooms, for example. Just this evening, we have talked about that front room as academy, and I've heard somebody call it an auditorium, somebody call it a theater, and Tom has called it a recital hall. And I think as soon as we can, we need to standardize on what we're going to call it. And I kind of looked to Tom to actually develop the nomenclature for us, because if we don't do that, we are both leading the public astray and confusing the public as to what the heck are we talking about? And so as soon as we can, just as we agreed it, I think in a prior meeting, not to call the lower level the basement. I think we should look to Tom to guide us into a nomenclature that we all use to describe what's going on inside this building. So I'm sorry, that's just a little sermon for me, but I know how much mischief it can cause if we don't standardize ourselves.
Tom, can you do that can we request? that you
Yeah,
do
so
that?
for the presentation, I will put a name on each room and, that way we can refer to each space with a name. And then if the committee takes exception to any of the nomenclature, we can change it.
Would it be appropriate to put a number and a name on it?
It will have a number as well.
Have a number as well, okay.
Thank you.
That'll help a lot with clarity.
Thank you, Al.
Yeah.
Taking it that far enough, I did have an additional question, and we talked about this a little earlier this week, earlier this week. There were certain long lead time items that would benefit from some early action. And the one I'm familiar with is the electrical system upgrade. Is there any way to identify those even at this early stage in the meeting that's coming up on the 2nd?
I think it's a little early for that. So we will identify ultimately what the systems we need to do for the building. And then once we have, if we're going to procure a construction manager, we'll start working with the construction manager to make sure that we try and identify and procure those items ahead of time.
And I believe we talked about, there is a date that we said we would decide on the construction manager. And I believe it was the end of June. Is that still is it on here somewhere?
Not on here yet, but we can certainly add it.
Yeah, there was a decision date, and it wasn't like the last meeting. It was sometime in, I believe it was June. But if you could put that on your milestone schedule.
Sure.
John, thank you. And getting back to the subcommittee discussion. There was a subcommittee formed, and that was the finance committee. That was Ann, Joan, and Eileen. I think we're going to have to, I don't know if we have to do it formally, but we will have to, Eileen is obviously no longer on that. So that the finance subcommittee will have to be defined as Joan and Ann. It is also identified as a meeting, the type of meetings that would have to be noticed, because there would be decisions made in terms of invoices as they move forward. so that the meetings would have to be noticed and minutes, the whole freedom of information. And is that as you understood it?
As I understood it.
Yes. Okay, and Joan, is that?
That's how I understand it as well. We probably should, if we can, set that schedule, at least start a monthly timeframe. And if we have to go to multiple, we can do that once the committee's formed. I mean, once we meet first.
Is there, Tom, is there a time when invoices are going to start coming in? That would need to be reviewed, that would need to be reviewed by a finance subcommittee, and then, I don't know if they have to be brought here or not. I'm not sure what the process is going to be.
Right now, the only invoices would be from Colliers and from, Tom's office,
It's a
QA&M.
pretty short meeting.
So, yeah, I mean, until you get the construction.
Highly important, I would bet, right? But
Until you get the construction going, I mean, those would be the only,
Okay.
probably.
So maybe we, as a full committee, we approve those invoices until we start construction. Does that make sense?
makes sense, sure.
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
And then a subcommittee for, there was a subcommittee proposed for a design subcommittee. That in itself was, would require all the FOIA requirements. And the purpose of the meeting, as I envisioned it, wasn't so much to make the design decisions, and maybe this is not what you thought, Tom or John, but I thought all design decisions eventually would come to the committee. That the purpose of a smaller group to meet would be to refine, to prioritize, and to be sure that the detail is that's brought to the committee is appropriate and put on the agenda. So it's really a group, a smaller group that would assist both of you, a smaller group from the committee, from our committee, that would assist in being sure that the agenda is set and all the items on the agenda are appropriate and have the right input on. And that doesn't require that's not something that requires a notice. Because the decisions are all made in the committee. And although we're right now we're going to a full committee meeting on the 2nd and a full committee meeting on the 8th. That after that, if we're going to be 2 weeks out, that a smaller group will be would contact you, John, or contact you, Tom, and say what's coming up on what should we be putting on the next agenda? What feedback might you need now? What feedback would you need from the committee? And help move things along a little faster than just bringing everything to the committee all the time. That we have a little bit of a sieve that says, these are all the things we have to discuss. These are the things that have to be discussed now, and here's what has to be discussed, and you give that information to us. We come back to you and we advise the chair, who will be me, to put it on set the agenda. Dave's going to be the chair for the next 2 meetings, or actually the next 3, I guess, 2nd, 8th, and then the one on the 22nd. I believe there's one on the 22nd. That's the 22nd or the 23rd, and I get back on the 22nd, so I wouldn't have time to prepare for that. So Dave's going to chair the next 3 meetings, and then that would be Dave's job after the 8th to be sure that we're if we need a meeting in between, another special meeting, or if the meeting on the 23rd is appropriate, and what should be brought to the meeting on the 23rd. Got that, Dave?
Got it, Joe.
Good.
So that's basically, you as the chair are going to be spearheading, or the chair or the vice chair will be spearheading and working with the design team to answer questions and just to propose what should be on the agenda.
I think it's that's kind of the chair should take the lead, or the vice chair. But really, we could bring in anybody if we have a question for someone on the committee, or we need the opinion on someone on the committee. I don't see there's any reason why we can't, have a quick phone call or an email or a conference call or even an in-person meeting that would allow us to bring someone from the committee if they're available, or even bring someone in from the committee, or via a Zoom connection.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, I agree. I mean, typically in the private sector, you would always have a check-in meeting before your regular scheduled meeting. So this meeting runs more efficiently, right? So if Tom brings something to our attention for the meeting, right, he's stuck with something, then we can take notes and be prepared for our, our regularly scheduled meeting. So I think they're important.
Check-in meeting. I like that. I like that terminology.
Well, they're not really meetings. They're just check-ins, right? You're just checking in with them,
And it's not something that has to be scheduled by a certain date or a certain time. It could be just a phone call.
Right. Could be a phone call. It could be a quick email.
Yeah.
Al, I just want to, do you have thoughts on that? I just want to make sure that we're not running afoul.
Were you addressing that to Al?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it sounds just fine to me. It's appropriate to structure an agenda so that it's productive, it's efficient, the information is available. And I consider that an appropriate role for the chairman and the vice chairman to make sure that the committee meetings are conducted productively and that everybody's expectations are proper as to what information is going to be brought to the meeting. All the decisions that Joe, I'll address you, Joe, as the chair,
Okay.
will be made by your committee,
Mhm.
as a committee. There will be no decision-making outside of this body, which includes 7 of you. So I don't see any conflict here, and I think we're well within the intentions and the spirit of the Freedom of Information Act.
Okay, thank you. Joe? Good?
Joe or Joan?
Joan,
Oh, okay.
you asked the question,
No.
Al answered it.
Yeah, no, that's the thing, as long as it's for the creation of the agenda and not making decisions on design and strategizing and giving direction on design, then that is appropriate, like you said, as long as
I did
the
have-
decision and the directions are being given by the full committee. Unless you create a subcommittee and then you notice those meetings.
I had a short conversation with Erin Mannix today too. She that I described, because I had called her much earlier. She got back to me 2 weeks later, but whatever. But she concurred also that was pretty much standard for for the way that other committees operate, and even town committees. That was her response to me. So no need to do that. The check-in may or may not be necessary between the 2nd and the 8th, but come unless Dave, unless you think we need it, because you're gonna be here. And but definitely between the 8th and the 23rd, that would be a good time to initiate a check-in meeting. And Dave, again, it's on you.
Yep. Thanks, Joe. Yeah. And I'll share my contact information with you, Tom, just in case there's anything that pops up, you and John. So.
All right, dude.
Okay. That concludes the subcommittee discussion, unless there is any other question on it, any other comments? Liaison remarks, Al?
Just a little pep talk from the selectmen. We think you guys are doing exactly what we expected you to do. You're on track. There's a lot of discipline here, keeping us moving forward. You're listening to the public, and so keep up the good work, full speed ahead. And I think there will be growing public excitement as some of the sketch designs begin to start appearing. You'll also find some public commentary heading your way when sketch designs begin appearing. But I think we all understand that's part of the process. The allocation of space and dollars is what this committee was put in place to decide. At times it will be challenging to you, but you have a great design team and supporting you. And when the time comes, you'll make the hard decisions. And some of them may happen a little sooner than later, it sounds like. But full speed ahead. I mean, this project seems to be going along very nicely.
Thank you, Al. Any committee remarks? This is anything we missed on the agenda? No? Okay. Jeannie, we could open it up for public comment. So anyone in the public who would like to raise their hand and make a comment, or pardon, Jeannie?
No one is raising their hand.
That brings us to one of the best parts of the meeting, adjourn.
Bon voyage.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
In favor, or second rather? Second. Favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye, aye, aye. Thank you.
I.
Motion- We're adjourning.